Hello, welcome back to Colonial versus Modern. Today I thought we would take a look at another wonderful kitchen appliance that gives us the ability to cook our food. Back in the colonial period, people would have been cooking on either the open fire outside or in a fireplace using the hearth. Today, of course, we have modern electric or gas stoves or ranges. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Since before the 17th and 18th century, people, of course, had been cooking on open fires, as I mentioned, or in large fireplaces, or pulling out beds of coal and putting them kind of on the skirt or the hearth of the fireplace. The fireplaces in houses often serve not only for cooking purposes, but also as a source of light and heat. Today, many of us, of course, have separate heat sources for cooking and heating our homes. The early British fireplaces were very, very large, so large in fact that women often stepped into them to adjust their pot locations. Pots were hung over the fire on what was known as a lug pole, which was a pole that stretched across the expanse of the fireplace. This pole was stationary and was made of wood, so over time it would weaken from use and heat. As you can probably imagine, cooking in this way was very dangerous, as when they stepped towards the fire and into the fireplace to relocate pots and pans, sometimes their skirts would catch on fire, and then other times the lug poles would break, sending scalding contents, liquid, all over the place. If you didn't have any disasters, cooking was still difficult, as keeping a constant heat was a challenge. On top of that, chimneys that were used for these large fireplaces oftentimes did not work well. It was very common for the draft to not quite be right, thus leaving the room blanketed in smoke. Other times, the draft was so strong that it would almost pull all the heat up the chimney along with the smoke. When the British colonists came to America, they brought with them the types of hearths that they knew. However, changes and improvements were quickly to come. One of these advancements was known as the crane. This would replace the lug pole. It was usually made of iron and was bolted into the side of the fireplace wall. The crane had a hinged arm that swung back and forth. This would allow women to adjust their pots without having to step into the fireplace. Gradually, the chimneys began to improve as well and doing a better job at drawing out the smoke. Like the British, German, and Dutch settlers also brought their designs for hearths with them. Whereas the British hearth was set almost usually right on the floor level, the German and Dutch built theirs raised off the floor, oftentimes to around hip height, so that women didn't have to bend as much. Some of these hearths even had built-in ovens, allowing for dual purposes. Most of the time, these hearths were also accompanied by a hood that connected to the chimney to draw the smoke out. Kind of similar to what you see over our stoves today, just without the electric fans. Finally, in 1796, the Count Rumford designed what became known as the Rumford fireplace. His design made fireplaces smaller and shallower and angled the walls so that the heat was reflected into the room. He also improved on the chimney and made it smaller. By making it smaller, it improved the draw, having more smoke go up without losing as much heat. Although iron cook stoves had been invented by the late 1700s, most people could not afford them. So it's not till about the 1830s that they will really start to take off, as the Industrial Revolution makes cast iron more readily available. There were several advantages to cooking on an iron stove. The firebox provided heat to more than just a cooktop. It provided heat for baking, warming, as well as heated the house. They also didn't use as much wood as fireplaces, and many of them could use coal. This was very important as at this point in time, a lot of people were moving into the cities to places where wood was scarce. Another advantage was that the smoke was drawn directly from the stove into the stovepipe and out the house. Like German and Dutch ovens previously had, the new iron stoves also brought the cooking surface higher up so that there was less bending. Even as those iron stoves made cooking easier, probably one of the biggest advancements of the modern stove was the ability to set a constant heat. While controlling heat was easier in the iron stoves, once stoves became heated by gas and electricity, it really changed the game. Along with electricity, you will also start getting central heating. This is another difference. People no longer rely on the stove to serve a dual purpose, and so they can go away from having to operate their stove constantly to keep the house warm to just turning on the stove to cook. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope that you'll appreciate your nice electric or gas stove. And please join us next week as we tackle another Colonial versus Modern. Thank you.